You'll need a helper and some special tools. You'll see how to use these tools as we reassemble the crankcase. Special piston ring compressors. Piston base A, piston base B. And you make these wooden blocks yourself. The dimensions are listed in your training module reference materials. Before reassembly, make sure the cylinders, pistons, and piston ring grooves are well oiled, and stagger the ring gaps as shown on page 815 in the service manual. Turn the crankshaft counterclockwise until the T1.2 drive pulley mark is facing up. Hold piston base A from the spring end and twist it like this, with the notches facing outward. Slide the arms under pistons 4 and 6 from the clutch side until the spring stops against piston 6's connecting rod. Release the tool and straighten up the arms so that they support the pistons. If necessary, rotate the crank slightly to allow the arms to straighten up as much as possible. Face the notch in piston support B upward and toward the connecting rod. Fit the tool under the piston, snug against the connecting rod and around the crank counterweight. Next, pull the Velcro strip on the special ring compressors apart and install them with the beveled edge facing up. Squeeze the compressors tightly to compress the rings, then fasten them securely. Position the compressor halves as shown here. The split on the number 2 compressor should be at 90 degrees to the crankshaft. The splits on the other compressor should be parallel to the crankshaft. Run the release cables from piston 6's ring compressor out over the end of the engine. Drape one cable from each side of piston 4's compressor over each side of the engine. And run both cables from piston 2's compressor over the side of the engine opposite the transmission. Then take out the dowel pin and the O-ring on the timing belt side of the engine, and stand the wooden blocks up under opposite corners to stop the crankcase as it comes down. Then wire the shift arm out of the way. Then lift the crankcase half into position over the pistons and set it straight onto piston number 2. Tap it down with your hand until it rests on the wooden blocks. When the crankcase is on piston 2 and the other ring compressors are in place, remove piston base B. Release the wire from the shift arm and pull with both hands at the same time to separate number 2's compressor. Then remove the halves. Apply a small amount of sealant to the bosses in the middle of the crankcase. Have your helper lift the crankcase up slightly and turn both wooden blocks on their sides, so you can carefully set the crankcase down onto both pistons until it rests on the wooden blocks. Twist piston base A's arms inward and then remove it. Pull with both hands at the same time on piston 6's compressor cables to separate and remove the halves. Then pull both of piston 4's compressor cables from opposite sides of the engine. Remove the compressor halves and you're ready for final assembly. Take the shop towel off the transmission and apply sealant sparingly to the case sealing surfaces. Remember, it only takes a small amount to fill imperfections on the machined surface. Next, remove the wooden blocks. Replace the dowel pin and the O-ring, and apply sealant where the blocks were sitting. Then set the case down evenly.